I was informed last night that we have now an official blog site. Like, I'm a blogger, I was told. I didn't know. It's a little podcast. That's what I am. See, what do I even know, right?
No more sleeping.
It took you so long.
I know. So welcome this morning, and it's so good to see everyone at the intersection. What you're seeing on screen, which only took us 2 years to get here, but what you're seeing on screen are the recordings from past at the intersections. So Billy, could you just scroll so slowly so they can see what is there? So whenever you're wanting to go back and review one or share it with people, or I don't know, use it in a meeting or something, or a part of it, this is where you can go to get those. And of course, we only have them, looks like, from May till now, because we hadn't been doing this, but Sacred has stepped up and is powering at the intersection. So which has really helped all of us in doing so. So I think Billy put the URL into chat. He just clicked on it there. You might want to go to one of those pages so they can see what the next one looks like, Billy. There you go. James Mendoza was here last week and talked about resiliency hubs and how congregations could possibly be resiliency hubs. And I know there was at least one person who asked me about the recording so that they could go take it back to their congregation. So this does have use, not just that you missed, but that you can share with others as well. Thanks, Billy. Do we have maybe 2 minutes worth of announcements? I hope somebody says something about Pathways to Hope. Do we have Doug on here anywhere? Otherwise, there he is. I knew he'd be here.
Yeah. Thank you, Ann. Pathways to Hope, August 26th and 27th. I'll put the URL in the chat. It's free. Outstanding speakers, Dr. Tom Insel. So go to the registration site. Again, just register, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody. We're having a very good response, and we hope everybody will join us, because it's the first time in 2 years that we've been back in person.
And Doug, in your humble opinion, because Doug's been leading this now for 7 years, as a volunteer, just so everybody knows what kind of blood, sweat, and elbow grease he's put into this, but what would you say is the number one thing that you're looking forward to at this Pathways to Hope? A speaker, or what are you looking forward to?
Each year, the conference moves as the needs of the community move. And I think where we are and what Dr. Insel is going to talk about is the importance of community and moving together and creating a movement for mental health. And he likens it to the civil rights movement. And it's time for our communities to kind of come together. And that's the other thing, is he talks about people, place, and purpose, the importance of community, and that it's healing. So I think we're going to focus on bridges to care and healing communities. And that's the theme for this year's conference. And it couldn't be more timely as we come out of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And it really even speaks to what we've been doing at the intersection this summer, is taking a look each week at one of the community collaboratives that has been growing out of the intersection and all of our mutual work together. And so we've talked about homelessness, and we've talked about resourcing, and we've got a nice long list of things, bridges to care, and what we're doing in terms of congregational cohorts across the city. And so this morning, it's on our collaborative. But what I'm going to say about this morning is that the collaborative, the immigration collaborative, is at work this morning.
Right.
And we're going to be hearing from Melody Woosley, about more of an update on what is happening in terms of immigration in our city. But the collaborative is very busy at work these past weeks and these days and well into the future. I do want to, before we begin the briefing, I want to take a moment to pause together for the 53 lives that were lost coming into our city and through our city. And so if we could take a moment. Thank you. It also makes me remember we held a vigil for Uvalde just the next day after it occurred. And we stayed in silence for a full minute for each of the lives lost. And so if we had done that this morning, that would have been almost an hour. And I think we all know that each of those lives is worth at least a minute, right? More than that. So thank you for all being here this morning. It is my honor to introduce my boss. Actually, I prefer to introduce her as my friend, and because that's who we are together and how we work together. She has been our strongest supporter. Probably don't know that. Most people wouldn't, but she has, let us kind of expand our wings, and sometimes while other people aren't watching, so we can do some movement that really needs to be done. So she's been very bold about that. And Mel, I don't want to embarrass you, but I do want to take a moment because I don't get these to do this with Mel. But Mel has spent her entire career with the city. And I think that started even with an internship.
Mm-hmm.
So her entire career with the city. And this is something that I've said to her face, but I'm going to tell all of you. When I go to briefings with the city council, and I have respect for everyone, but I really do believe that Mel is the most brilliant among them. She's a critical thinker. And when she presents, I mean, she can respond to any conversation that's happening in the city. I suppose that happens when your whole career, is in one place, but taking in the information, moving it around. I don't know how her memory works the way it does, but it works a lot better than mine. But I just have a lot of respect for Mel and what she has done for the faith community and the community at large. I also want to, in case folks don't recognize it, the Department of Human Services is not the same as the Department of Human Resources. So Human Resources, which you might recognize, that's like personnel. And of course, that does exist in the city. But Human Services are the folks that bring you senior centers, and Head Start is in there. And of course, that's why this initiative was placed there, so that we would focus on services to the people among us, and in particular, those who are most vulnerable. And so it is no small department. And somehow or other, immigration has also been pushed this direction. Mel is just like, oh, just give me all of it type of thing. But I don't know how she does it. We have a lot of plates spinning just with the faith community, and Mel has more than that. So enough of that. So I want to introduce you to Mel this morning. She's going to be bringing us much more a briefing on the status of immigration in San Antonio. As I said, our collaborative folks are literally at work. So Mel, I want to thank you for coming, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, and thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it. And I wanted to start just giving you some background on where we are right now. I'm going to focus specifically on the migrants who are crossing the southern border seeking asylum and making their way to San Antonio. And I know that you all have heard quite a few things, but I'll start with some background and then we can spend some time with questions discussing that. And so since 2019, really, the city of San Antonio has worked closely with the Department of Homeland Security, the other DHS, and nonprofit partners to serve migrants transiting San Antonio. And we've served as a primary transportation hub for migrants who are released from either Immigrations and Custom Enforcement, ICE, at facilities in Pearsall, Dilley, and Karnes City, or those released by CBP, Customs and Border Patrol in Laredo, Eagle Pass, and Del Rio, and also some coming from Laredo. And when you look at the map, you realize that all roads lead to San Antonio. And so there are nonprofits at the border who are also helping when migrants are released, but they're, you can imagine in small towns like Del Rio, Eagle Pass, Uvalde, the resources aren't great. And so they're moving the migrants as quickly as they can to San Antonio to travel. We ran a small operation in 2019. We thought we were serving a lot of people, averaged maybe 100 to 150 a day. Last April, really, it surged again, and we started seeing more and more migrants. Over the summer, we worked with our nonprofit partners, Catholic Charities, the Interfaith Welcome Committee, Travis Park Church, Food Bank, to set up a system again using mostly hotel rooms, and then Travis Park Church as a overflow shelter. And that was really working until probably March of this year, and the numbers just became overwhelming. And so we've relied on human services staff to help with that, volunteers to some extent, but it's just become too much. And so on July 7th, we opened the Migrant Resource Center, which is located on San Pedro. The location was selected because it's close to the airport. And this surge, most migrants are leaving by plane rather than the bus station. And so we're providing transportation to the airport, shelter, meals while they're there, navigation, so they understand, where they're going. We're helping them purchase their travel in some cases, and providing those basic services. There's showers there. There, of course, plenty of bathrooms and hygiene items so that they can have respite while they're waiting to move along. And this MRC has been a joint operations with our Emergency Operations Center. We have the fire department is manning and running the shelter area, and Human Services is doing case management, travel navigation, and those types of services. And so, we really could not have taken on an operation this size without the help of the fire department. And our local nonprofits, Catholic Charities, is still very involved. And so, really ultimately, we are looking to transition most of the operation from the city to a nonprofit. And so we're working on what that looks like. We don't know exactly when it will happen, ideally by the end of this month, but the city will stay there and continue to do this work as long as we need to. It's a big lift to be ready to transition into operating something this size. The number, to give you some scale, like I said earlier, 2019, we would have 100 to 150 migrants coming through this year. Really since March, we're averaging 700 to 800. And so since April of 2021, we've had almost 200,000 migrants come through San Antonio on their way to destinations across the country. What we're also seeing this year that's different is that most of the migrants still continue to have travel plans and the financial means to purchase tickets. They're on their way to family or a host. But we also have a much larger percentage, probably about 30%, that are simply fleeing the countries of Venezuela, Cuba, Peru, some Colombia, and then some Central American. But Venezuela is by far the country that's providing, or people are leaving the most, and they have no financial means. If they did, they may have lost it along their journey to the border through theft, or maybe they worked with cartels to try to get transportation into the United States, which is, we're finding, is also a big issue that Border Patrol and really the federal government have to deal with. And so we're here trying to make sure that the people who are being dropped off by buses and nonprofits and Border Patrol have a place to go and are not left on their own. And so that's really the nutshell of what we're doing. The three things that I think, 2 or 3 things I think the faith community could really get involved with and take on is, help with volunteers. Always volunteers are essential to operations like this. People who are willing to help with the migrants and work directly with them. There's a lot of different ways people can do that. Find the fit that works for them. Also just providing information to congregations in the community. And, I think that coming from faith leaders, there's a lot of misinformation out there. They are legally authorized by Homeland Security to travel in the United States and be in the United States. Really, I guess, until they aren't. So, they receive a asylum hearing date, and they get to their location and attend that, start that process. It can be a long process. People might be here 2 years before they see an asylum judge and have a response on if they have to return or they are able to stay in the United States. The other piece is that they cannot work for at least 6 to 9 months while they're in the United States, which, for people that don't have financial means, that's a huge burden. A lot of them will try to pick up day labor jobs. That's how they've survived coming up through Central America and Mexico, is by picking up jobs along the way. And of course, we let them know that can jeopardize their asylum status, but they have to find a way to survive. So, that getting that information out to the community, I think, one, that they're legally here, they are not undocumented immigrants. And 2, that, there are a lot of needs. Catholic Charities and Food Bank are accepting donations of specific items, new items, and they've put a list out, but also, cash donations if that's the preferred way to assist. And I think, maybe the last ask would be, we do have immigrants that are coming through and they didn't necessarily have a plan or a location where they wanted to go, and they are indicating they would like to stay in San Antonio. And so, anyone who would be interested in being a host family or providing support for families that stay here, whether it's housing or help through the legal process, that's also something that Catholic Charities is focused on, case management. They don't want to send migrants to a city where there's no support. And so we don't want to just get rid of them by putting them on a plane somewhere, and when they get off, there's nothing. There's not a shelter bed, there's not a host family. They're basically, transported into homelessness. And so that's really been Catholic Charities' focus, as well as many other things. But so I think support for that system that they're trying to create could also be very helpful. And with that, I'll be happy to answer questions.
So we have some in chat. Others, though, if you're interested in speaking, please use the raise your hand option down at the bottom of your screen, where there's the little emoji face. You just click on that, and then it says raise hand, and click there. So if anybody would like to do that, you're welcome to do so. Mel, I know that this would be, and maybe not, it might be a guess though, about approximately percentage, how many folks that migrate through here do you think stay here?
Very few. Probably less than, 99% move on. To be honest, the courts in northern and eastern states tend to be more friendly. And the network, the messaging is just moving all along. The migrants are hearing these things. They know that there are communities that will provide shelter. A lot of people want to go to New York because they have different laws. So, it's amazing how much they know when they get here, as far as where they can pick up work, where they can get assistance. They're very self-sufficient to some extent, but we're also a very different country. So, they do need that support. And I can answer some of the questions in the chat. There's a lot.
I can also
Thank you, Paul, for the Walker Ranch plug. That's so cool.
That's cool. I did want to mention to folks, I've put out information about the need for volunteers. What's most helpful in terms of volunteers are people who can be committed to the work. They're not necessarily looking for a lot of hands to come in and out, and they're looking for people who also, are pretty confident, have background checks already done. That's really helpful. You can get those, but somebody already has a background check that works faster. And people too who are bilingual. Now,
yes,
those are most helpful, the quickest, and so there's that.
A lot of the volunteers are coming through Food Bank and Catholic Charities, and Food Bank has put some things in process to get that background check. And Catholic Charities can also help with that. But if you or someone who wants to volunteer has worked or is working for a school district or the county or an organization that does background check when you enter employment, that can also be a proxy. Doesn't necessarily have to mean a new background check, but like I said, if you work in the school district, you've been very thoroughly background checked, and so there's no need to do that again if you can show, or the person can show that they're a current employee of an organization like that. So that's a good proxy. And then let's see.
Susan asked, has anybody added up what the city, county, faith-based and nonprofit organizations are contributing to our host efforts? That would be a big number.
Well, and it's a little surprising sometimes because we're doing this in a very different way than the city usually does things. FEMA actually has a fund or allocation to reimburse border communities and communities impacted by the migrant surge for the work they're doing. And so, we do this work, and then every quarter submit for reimbursement and hope that there's still funding left, and that everything we've done is eligible. And we've been very successful with this so far. It's worked out well, and so it's not straining the city's budget. But if that allocation were to go away, it would be a huge expense to the community to do this work. It is very expensive.
You probably don't have a ballpark. I'm going to ask.
I would guess.
Yeah.
Just for all of the migrant services that we're involved with, I don't know that the county is spending very much, but the nonprofits can also apply directly to FEMA for reimbursement for their expenses. So between the nonprofits and the city, we are probably spending close to $1 million a month.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question from the chat, and Nadia's got her hand up and we'll go there. How do the migrants access the resource center? Do they have to be dropped there by authorities, or they arrive in the city on their own? What happens?
So the vast majority are brought on buses, different kinds of buses. So in Del Rio, they have charter buses that the migrants can pay $30 or $40 for a ride to San Antonio. Other communities are using local transport vans. And then, in Eagle Pass, you can catch a Greyhound pretty much only to San Antonio. So some of the migrants will purchase Greyhound tickets when they walk out of the Border Patrol holding area.
Mel, are they still busing people to DC? Do you know?
There are communities that are doing that. I think maybe Del Rio, we are not. So we are not participating in that. But there are other communities that are. And the migrants, a lot of them want to go to that area of the country. So, it's a free ride. They don't have to use their means to get there, but we don't want to add to that community's stress.
I'm going to lob it to Nadia, who's been patient with her hand. We have more questions, but Mel, can you stay with us another 5 to 15 minutes?
Sure.
Okay. Nadia.
Hi, Melody. This is Nadia Mavraka, CEO of Culturingwo. We met a couple months ago at City Council. It's nice to see you.
Nice to
I just had 2 questions. One is, you talked about sort of future changes in terms of nonprofits potentially managing the Migrant Resource Center. I wanted to know if you could speak to the location. I saw an article related to a neighborhood sort of town hall related to the location, and are you still sort of focused on that space on San Pedro near the airport? And And then the other question I had was just curious from what Anne had said at the very beginning with your intro related to immigration within the city operations falling under DHS. So does that mean that the immigration liaison position is going to be moving under DHS? I don't know if you're able to share that.
No, actually well, and then we have actually Tino Gallegos, if you all aren't aware, is transitioning out of that role. The city attorney's office is where that office or liaison is housed, and they have hired someone new. I don't think she started yet. But no, that will stay in the city attorney's office. Really, human services role is this migrant effort and working with nonprofit agencies and city council to ensure that there are services available to not just asylum seeking migrants, but to immigrants who have been in San Antonio and are pursuing, different aspects of the immigration system, whether it's asylum or naturalization, citizenship, that kind of thing. So we provide the support for the families that are here that may need resources, but the policy piece of immigration is housed in the city attorney's office.
Thank you. Are there publicity efforts to give truthful information about the MRC, the Migrant Resource Center, and the migrant status, like on .gov? Where do people go?
There is a FAQ. I believe it's on .gov, but I will check. There's been some things that have gone out by social media, and there's been a lot of media interest that has given us the opportunity to reinforce and provide some transparency as to what we're doing. You ask about the location. Yes, we have a lease through the end of the year, and then we will reassess the need to continue such a large operation if we need to, and continue to look at the best location. But we needed a very large facility, and we close to the airport, because we're using Star Shuttle to help transport, but we're also using our vans and our drivers. And so before we opened this location, they were going 5 or 6 different locations, and so this has helped quite a bit. But and I think your other question was, how are the migrants getting to San Antonio? And the vast majority are coming in on buses from the border. We do have every once in a while walk-ins, and we're not entirely sure how. Some have walked from the border. So if they have the paperwork, we are only accepting migrants that have been released by Border Patrol with paperwork and a destination identified. So there are many other immigrant groups and statuses, but these are the only the asylum seeking migrants released at the border are the only ones that we're accepting at the Migrant Resource Center.
Anne Marie also posted a San Antonio Report article on neighborhood complaints. I confess I have not read it yet. I don't know how those relationships are going, Mel. Do you have any insight?
Well, that I'm glad you brought this up, because there have been a number of neighborhood complaints, also protests from organizations that oppose immigration of many kinds. They seem to be falling off a little bit. We've had a couple of organized protests outside the center. This last one, I think, was the day before yesterday. There were very few people there. So, either they have moved on to something else, or have gotten the information they're looking for, but we're prepared if there's more of those protests. And then the other side, it's really separate, are the neighbors who live in the neighborhood behind the Migrant Resource Center have identified some things that they have concerns about, valid concerns. And so we've really stepped up our monitoring of trash in the area, making sure that that's not making its way into the neighborhood. We at intake ask every migrant not to walk back through the neighborhood. And we can't keep them from coming and going really to any large extent, but we do ask that they not leave the grounds for their own safety, as well as the ability of businesses in the area to continue operations. We had at the beginning a lot of people who pulled into the parking lot of this strip shopping center across the street with donations of clothes and food, and really just out of their car, and it became quite a mess. They would leave all of the things on the ground. And so that was really, I think, what initiated a lot of the complaints from the neighbors. And so we've been able to, work with police department and solid waste to keep people from doing that, because it's private property. It's up to the property owner if they want to allow that, and they don't. And so the police department has been able to help, and solid waste keep that area more clean, and the complaints have fallen off a little bit.
Rich has posted that there's an immigration town hall this Monday at 7, downtown UTSA campus. Sheriff Salazar is pulling that together. 5 members, 2 moderators. Looks like for the Spanish-speaking community, Univision and Telemundo. So folks can scroll to that in chat. Anne Marie, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to point out, in addition, the migrant center, they made it warmer in the facility itself, so that they don't have to go outside to get warm. So there's an example of how energy conservation can actually help the neighborhood, the community at large, and our pocketbooks. Yay!
Yes. It was so cold in there, and it's something we had to work out with the property owner. It was frozen. The ability, we couldn't turn the thermostat up and down. It was 65 degrees. And the migrants aren't used to that kind of temperature. Even our staff were freezing, but they were truly really uncomfortable. And so getting that temperature back up, so helpful.
Mm-hmm. And I know there are other efforts. Rich is on the line, and there's an effort this coming soon this fall. Rich, you want to tell us about that? The YWCA?
Thank you very much. The YWCA during Welcoming Week is going to be having a newcomers resource fair on September 17th. We are going to have 5 main areas of interest for immigrants and refugees. We're going to have vendors for education, economic empowerment, health, family entertainment, legal services, housing services. We're expecting 30 to 50 vendors, 300. We're preparing for over 300 visitors for it. So if you guys are interested in that, I put in the chat the flyer for the event to save the date. They are still looking for people that are wanting to be vendors for the event. So definitely, if you guys are interested, I'll put my information in the chat, and I hope we can get you guys' support. This is going to be a great event, and September 17th, it's from 9 to 3 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you. And just to let you all know, part of the ARPA funding was dedicated for immigration providing agencies, and we issued an RFP Early July, we're in the process of evaluating the applications that we received. But those dollars will go to helping with the legal process, helping with those basic needs and support services that immigrant families face and need while they're here. So we should be taking that to council in early September and getting those dollars out the door to agencies that are doing that work so that they can expand.
Thank you. Anything else? We could probably take one more question, or we can all say goodbye and see each other next week. Anyone? Well, I want to thank you, Mel, for taking the time. I know you feel like you're living and breathing migration these days. Did you mention how many folks that are migrating through per day or per week? I know you said the 200,000, but what's it look like daily?
The last several weeks, probably about 800 to 900 a day. Some of them do go directly to the airport because they've already been able to purchase their tickets. So they don't all go through the Migrant Resource Center, but numbers have been pretty high.
It's a lot of people.
It's
a lot of people. A lot more than when 2019.
Oh, yes.
And we were all like deer in the headlight, and it was large. So thank you all for meeting here today at the intersection. And thank you, Mel, for taking the time.
Sure.
And we'll see you. Everyone have great weekends. I'm really hoping for some rain and praying for it. We got flooding going on in the Midwest, and yeah, that's another conversation. Climate change, another one, another time. Thank you all. We'll see you next week at the intersection.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mel.